On a cold, silent Halloween night, when the moon hung low like a pale, watchful eye over the town of Ravenfall, three friends Ayan, Rida, and Sam walked down the narrow road that led to the abandoned Blackthorn House, a mansion so old and feared that even the wind refused to pass through its broken windows. Tales of screams, shadows, and vanishing footsteps had kept people away for decades, but the three friends believed most ghost stories were exaggerated. What they didn't know was that this one wasn't. As they approached the rusted iron gate, it groaned open on its own, as if the house had been waiting for them with a disturbing amount of patience. Rida felt a chill creep up her spine, and Sam nervously laughed it off, pretending to be brave, but Ayan noticed the way his hands shook. The path to the door was lined with dead, leafless trees that twisted toward the sky like skeletal claws. The closer they got, the thicker the air became, heavy like unseen eyes pressing on them from all sides. When Ayan pushed the door, it didn't feel like wood. It felt warm, as if the house itself was breathing beneath the surface. With a long creak, the door opened into a hallway swallowed in darkness, except for faint candlelight flickering at the far end, where dust floated like restless spirits. As soon as they stepped inside, the door slammed behind them so violently the walls shuddered. They froze. Then, slowly, the candles on both sides of the hall lit up one by one, leading deeper into the mansion like a trail made for them and only them. The air carried a strange heartbeat, like thump, steady and distant, echoing through the wooden floorboards. Ayan whispered that something was off. This didn't feel like an abandoned place. It felt alive. The portraits hanging along the hall were covered in dust, but each had deep scratches over the faces, as if someone, or something, wanted to erase their identity. As Rida leaned closer to one painting, she realized the scratches weren't random. They formed shaped symbols, ancient markings she had never seen before, swirling like curses carved into the canvas. Suddenly, the eyes in the portrait shifted, just for a split second, but enough to make her scream. Sam rushed over, but as he looked, the portrait returned to its original lifeless state. A cold breath of wind brushed Ayan's neck, even though there were no windows open. The floor creaked above them, slow steps pacing back and forth like someone was walking upstairs. But the house had been abandoned for 40 years, or so people believed. They followed the candlelit path to another long corridor where an antique grandfather clock stood. Its pendulum swung back and forth, though the clock hands were missing entirely. Every swing of the pendulum made a soft metallic chime, each one slightly louder than the last, ringing through the empty halls like a warning. Sam touched the glass, and the pendulum froze instantly. Then the clock let out a low groan, like a deep sigh of annoyance. He jumped back. A sudden thud came from above them, followed by quick footsteps rushing across the floor, heading toward the staircase at the far end of the hall. The friends exchanged frightened looks. Something was in the house with them. Before they could decide whether to run or investigate, the candles blew out in a single breath, throwing the entire hallway into darkness. For a moment, all they could hear was their own breathing, and the loud, slow heartbeat resonating through the floorboards. Then, faintly, a whisper traveled down the corridor. Ayan, and it was a soft, drawn-out voice, echoing like someone trapped in the walls. Ayan stepped back, but his foot sank slightly into a cracked floorboard. A cold mist seeped out and wrapped around his ankle like a hand pulling him down. Rida grabbed him and yanked him back just as the mist retreated. The heartbeat sound grew louder, vibrating through the wooden planks. The portraits on the walls groaned, their frames bending, the painted faces twisting into silent screams. The air grew colder. The candles reignited on their own, but now the hallway looked different. The floor tiles had changed color to a darker shade, and the symbols from the portraits were now etched onto the walls, themselves glowing faintly like embers. Sam whispered that they weren't in the same hallway anymore. The house was shifting. As they reached the staircase, a tall, shadowy figure appeared at the top. Its form stretched unnaturally, like a silhouette pressed against the wrong angle of reality. Its head tilted slowly, bones cracking loudly in the silence. The figure stood motionless for a few seconds, then dissolved into a thick, black smoke that drifted toward the ceiling. Ayan felt an instinctual terror he couldn't explain, like the shadow wasn't just watching them, it was choosing which one to take first. They climbed the staircase cautiously, each step creaking loudly under their feet, echoing through the dark holes above. When they reached the landing, they found a long corridor of closed rooms. Each door had strange symbols carved into it, glowing faintly like they were alive. Rida pointed to one door that shuddered slightly, as if something behind it was breathing against the wood. They moved toward the room at the far end, the only one with no carvings, no symbols, no light. As they opened it, a rush of cold air blasted out. The room was empty, except for a small wooden box sitting in the center. The floor around it was covered with dust, except for the clean circular space around the box, as though someone had been sitting there moments before. Ayan approached the box nervously. The moment he touched it, the candles in the entire corridor went out again. The room plunged into darkness so thick it felt like a physical weight pressing on their chests. Then a whisper, louder this time, ripped through the silence. "Get out!" A low rumble shook the house, and the walls began to pulse like beating flesh. The floor vibrated violently. The box in Ayan's hand heated up until he dropped it to the ground. The lid opened slightly on its own, and a thin beam of red light shot out, illuminating a small, carved wooden mask inside. Sam reached for it, but the floor beneath him cracked open, exposing a swirling black void that stretched downward endlessly. He stumbled back as a bony, pale hand reached out from the void, grabbing at the air. Rida pulled him away just in time. The void closed with a loud slam. The heartbeat grew louder, faster, angry. They ran back into the hallway only to find that the corridor had changed again. Now the walls were covered in moving symbols, slithering like serpents across the wood. Every door shook violently, as though something inside each room was begging to be released. At the far end, the shadowy figure reappeared closer this time, its form clearer, tall and twisted. Its eyes glowed faint red like burning embers. It raised an impossibly long arm and pointed directly at Ayan. The heartbeat stopped, dead silence. Then, in a voice like grinding stone, it whispered again, "Ayan, come downstairs." Suddenly, the floor beneath them lurched downward like an elevator dropping. They stumbled as the hallway stretched, spiraled, and twisted into shapes that made no sense. The house was alive. And it didn't want them to leave. A door burst open and a gust of icy wind pushed them down the stairs. They rolled to the first floor, coughing, trembling, hearts pounding. The front door, once closed, was now wide open. They could see the moonlight outside. They sprinted toward it, but just as they reached the threshold, the door slammed shut with a thunderous bang. The shadow figure appeared behind them, closer than ever, whispering, "It's too late, you belong to the house now." And in that moment, the entire mansion went silent as the heartbeat began again, louder, deeper, and the floor beneath them started to crack open, revealing a darkness that seemed alive.